So we need to talk about what Nintendo's president really just said about all of the Nintendo Switch 2 rumors and reports online, because there's a ton of talk about this recently due to the fact that Nintendo just held their most recent quarterly financial briefing, where there is a section that investors are able to ask their questions to Nintendo, and almost always Nintendo's next gen hardware plans come up. Sometimes they're pressed directly on what they know so far or around rumors and leaks online, and while Nintendo is typically known for just dismissing that entirely and saying we don't comment on reports like that, this time they are taking a different path and actually just outright potentially lying. But we're going to really break that down and talk about the broader reasoning behind it, because Nintendo's not going to shoot themselves in the foot walking into a holiday season regardless of what they have planned up their sleeves. And there's also some data to support another side of the argument that they're actually doing great whenever it comes to the sell-through rate of software on the current Nintendo Switch and even the trajectory for the overall console sales. But before we do get on the same page with all of these details, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification if you're new here to join Sunbro Nation. And with that, guys, I want to first hop over to VGC, where there is a very interesting article that we need to read through with the exact comments and some of the rebuttals, I guess you could say, from Furukawa against all of these various reports that we've seen being talked about recently online, many of which we've talked about here on the channel, such as a 2-screen patent that did go public for a Nintendo device of some sort. Whether or not it ever makes it to market is up for debate, and I really wasn't sold on this being any kind of potential design for the next generation Nintendo console, especially considering that it did go public before Nintendo chose to unveil the device officially to us. But it definitely got the internet talking on whether or not we might ever see Nintendo go back to something like a 2-screen device, and that's definitely still on the table. But you can't take it as fact that that particular patent was the new footprint for their next gen console, and Furukawa definitely doubled down on that. But we also have all of those reports stemming out of Gamescom 2023 with dev kits being shown off behind closed doors, and that got brought up here too, in addition to the biggest one that I don't really think you can actually deny because it's part of a court filing case, which is the Activision Blizzard versus FTC trial, where we actually learned that Activision Blizzard was briefed on a document titled Switch NG, and it was with Bobby and President Shuntaro Furukawa. So kind of not a great look for Shuntaro Furukawa on this particular statement. But first, let's get on the same page with everything that's being talked about here in this VGC article, which reads: Nintendo denies briefing developers on Switch 2 and dismisses multi-screen patent. President claims the company didn't brief Activision on its next-gen console plans. Earlier this year, both Eurogamer and VGC cited sources claiming that Nintendo had privately shown tech demos for its next console to select developers behind closed doors at Gamescom in Germany. Correspondence unsealed as part of the US Federal Trade Commission's legal battle with Microsoft also suggested that Activision Blizzard had been briefed on Nintendo's next-gen console plans in late 2022. However, according to Japanese publication Mainichi, Nintendo boss Furukawa denied both of these reports during a private earnings call on Tuesday, calling them inaccurate. The president is also claimed to have dismissed a recent Nintendo patent filing for a device with multiple screens and said that the plans detailed were not necessarily for any future device. We are aware that patent information is published upon application. However, this does not necessarily mean that it will be featured in future products, he said, translated by VGC contributor Robert Zefazan. At the time of the Gamescom reports, Nintendo did not comment when approached for a response. However, it's worth noting that it has denied press reports in the past, only for them to later be proven correct, sometimes a day later. Nintendo has yet to officially comment on plans for its next console. However, according to VGC sources, the company has already dispatched Switch 2 development kits to key partners with a launch planned for the second half of 2024. So while I do think the patent statement could be entirely accurate, and Furukawa is likely just telling the truth in the fact that they may have patented that dual screen technology for something that may or may not be used with a future Nintendo product, it doesn't mean that it's right around the corner in the form of a Nintendo Switch 2 or the successor to the Switch, but it just means that it's something that R&D is playing around with, potentially further down the road. Or maybe we do get a 2-screen Switch and they are planning to utilize that patent, but not necessarily in its current form, and that could still be a way to spin the truth that direction. I personally don't think we're going to see a 2-screen Switch 2, but it's on the table. It's Nintendo we're talking about here. They like gimmicks. Anything is possible. But then when it comes to the reports specifically about the Activision Blizzard one, because that's one that leaked court documents actually just straight up show that there was a conversation between Bobby Kotick and President Shuntaro Furukawa with a document enclosed in that email titled Switch NG. I feel like that's a very hard thing to deny when you have it in a legal court battle. And as VGC has noted, Nintendo has a history with just straight up denying reports, and they actually cite a couple links where you have a Nintendo Life article that reads, Nintendo denies 3DS redesign, Wii U price revelation. And that was published on Monday, June 4th, 2012. And legitimately in the same month, turn around and get a post that we have portable 3DS entertainment goes extra large with new Nintendo 3DS XL, really pointing out that you can ask Nintendo point blank about any kind of report or publication being talked about online, and it's not going to impact their broader communication to their end consumers, and they are going to choose to hold back information until they're ready to feature it with a big surprise trailer. It doesn't matter how many investors pin them down with pinpoint questions. They can just say that rumors and reports online are inaccurate, because if you use a broad statement like that, you're not really necessarily lying to your investors. You're just stating that there are numerous different rumors and reports online that are talking about next generation hardware that aren't accurate. And I do think that that's true. I mean, think about all of the Nintendo Switch 2 reports we've seen circulating online. They don't all have to be true, but I do think that there's some very credible sources that are citing some really interesting data that Nintendo will continue to deny until they're ready to drop that trailer and market it to us themselves. Not to mention, they're not going to tell us that a brand new Switch is around the corner for early or mid 2024 whenever we have holiday season 2023 upon us, and they're hitting us hard with all of these bundles on literally every SKU of the Switch family this year. As we've talked about in previous videos, the Switch Lite has a bundle, the base model Switch has a bundle, and the Switch OLED has a bundle this year. If that's not clearing out stock, I don't know what is. And while console sales and software sales are still really strong for Nintendo, I do think that it is interesting to see their outlook on the current situation that they're in with Switch hardware, because if you'd want to play devil's advocate with this entire conversation and think that maybe Nintendo doesn't have new hardware ready to go for 2024 and they might ride out the Switch even longer, there is at least some sales data to support that that is a viable option for them, as you have Super Mario Bros. Wonder officially being the fastest Mario game ever in terms of software sales since launch. We have 132 plus total million units sold of the Nintendo Switch, with 1.133 billion pieces of software sold, which is absolutely insane. And you have a very interesting slide within Nintendo's future outlook of the Nintendo Switch that you can see, which reads, Nintendo Switch will enter its 8th year. New titles will continue to be released. Maintain and expand user engagement with Nintendo Switch, maintaining business and momentum. Nintendo Switch will be entering its 8th year in March 2024. We will continue to release new titles and content for Nintendo Switch without being bound by the traditional concept of the platform lifecycle. Going forward, we will continue to see many consumers play Nintendo Switch and maintain our business momentum. So you can read a statement like that at first glance and think, well, clearly Nintendo thinks they still have it made in the sun with the Nintendo Switch, and they're not going to plan on releasing new hardware anytime soon. And I personally don't think that that's their messaging there, but I do think that it reinforces that idea that when you talk about the total life cycle for the Nintendo Switch, meaning the overall support for the console, that likely that 10-year timeline that we've seen Nintendo reference in the past is likely what we will see from this hardware. It doesn't mean that new hardware isn't being marketed and out and is the new flagship device and is sold alongside the current family of systems today. It means that we will likely see a new SKU introduced for a Nintendo Switch 2, a Super Nintendo Switch, whatever you want to call it, the next generation leap at a higher price point, and then a potential price cut to the current model of Switches, and Nintendo will still try to support those as much as possible, potentially even more than we've seen them do in generations past, as even in a recent video I'm quoted saying that Nintendo really believes in generations. If you look at their history, they start to release exclusive games only on their new next-gen hardware almost immediately after any said console launches, if you look at their overall track record. Going forward with the Nintendo Switch and statements like this, we might see more drawn out support for the Switch and have more cross-generational releases than we've seen them do with the traditional concept of their generational cycles in the past. We might see them pull a little bit more of a Sony move, where you have the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 both receiving games for years and years before you're kind of ultimately slowly phased into that full new hardware where you have to kind of have the newest system in order to play the new exclusive games. And while I don't think Nintendo will do that for longer than a year or two, it's very possible that with the install base that they have of the Switch of 132 plus million, that they want to keep this thing going, selling alongside whatever their new console is that I still 100% believe is coming in 2024 for quite a bit longer than we've seen them support consoles in the past. But that's what's really said from Furukawa. We might get some different translations and revisit the topic briefly in videos in the future, but that's really where I want to hear from you guys. What do you think about these latest comments? Do you think that Nintendo did indeed brief Activision Blizzard and that those dev kits were shown off at Gamescom 2023? Do you tend to believe Furukawa saying that these rumors and patents and reports are just not accurate online, and maybe they're really not planning anything in terms of new hardware to be announced anytime soon? I definitely don't think that, but I would love to hear your thought process if you do. And do you think that Nintendo will continue to support the Switch alongside of their next gen platform for far longer than we've seen them do with previous consoles in the past? And when it's all said and done, at the current trajectory, do you think the Nintendo Switch will indeed go down as the best-selling console ever? But make sure you let me know about your thoughts and feelings on everything we talked about today in the comments down below, as I do look forward to hearing from you all. Go watch yesterday's video next if you haven't already. It's on screen right now. And make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you haven't already. And I will see you guys in the next video.